Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Stan Scott with the first iteration of Monday Morning Coffee. This is part of the sort of changes and additions we're going to make here at Foggy Bottom Line for the new year, 2026. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and a Happy New Year, and all best wishes for prosperity in this new year for all of us. I had planned, honestly, to take about 15 or 20 minutes to discuss the um, the changes coming at Foggy Bottom Line, and I'll do that at the end. But over the weekend, the Trump administration, the United States, went to war in Venezuela with the immediate objective of capturing President Nicolas Maduro and bringing him back to the U.S. For prosecution under an indictment left over from 2020. And so I'm going to need to discuss that a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about this from a couple of different perspectives. One is what does this mean for foreign policy? What does it mean to other countries? I'll talk a little bit about domestic policy and Trump's base and what they might or might not think about this. And I will talk a little bit about this on a theoretical plane, given that my academic training is in international relations theory. And I think this has some interesting implications for thought in that area. So, real quick, a little bit of history first. This whole mess in Venezuela basically started back in the day when Hugo Chavez, an avowed socialist, took over the country. He did okay. He did well enough for a while, mostly because Venezuela's economy is based on extraction, mostly of oil. And with that money, any government can create a certain sense of prosperity. That has worked in other countries. It worked in the United States for a long time, and starting to work that way again here, since we're now the leading exporter of oil in the world. But Chavez used this money to basically try to bring a certain level of prosperity to the people of Venezuela, especially his supporters, and that has to be noted. Chavez was a big bugaboo to the United States. The United States has historically opposed what we think of as left-wing regimes in South and Latin America. So think, Honduras, Guatemala, Chile, all of these countries, whenever it looked like they were going to go down the socialist or quote unquote communist pathway, the United States tended to intervene. And a lot of this was to support corporate interests. The United States, in fact, overthrew the government of Guatemala intentionally just because United Fruit Company asked them to. So this is nothing new here, nothing new at all, especially in this part of the world. Now, when Chavez died in 2013, Nicolas Maduro took over the regime. Now, Maduro is nominally a socialist as well, but he's really just a strongman, autocrat, authoritarian, who basically looting the state for his own interests. And as the oil industry in Venezuela sort of lost its power, the oil prices fell, their oil producing infrastructure sort of collapsed. They nationalized the oil and kicked some American companies out. Now Chevron's still there. I think it's Chevron is actually still there and pumping oil. But the oil in Venezuela, I understand, is not the best. It's expensive to extract. It's not the easiest to refine. So honestly, American oil companies aren't that interested in it. And so in 2024, when another election took place in Venezuela, the opposition party, a woman named Corina Machado, won the primary to represent the opposition. Now, Machado is the same woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize last year. Now I can say it's last year. The Nobel Peace Prize that Donald Trump wanted desperately to win. So Machado wins this Nobel Peace Prize for her work against Maduro, trying to help the people of Venezuela. But it has to be said that Machado herself is a right winger, and she dedicated her Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump, and even said she thought he should have won it. So Machado wins the primary to face Maduro in the election in 2024. Maduro bans her from running. Okay, he bans her from running. And folks, this is, as an aside, this is kind of what might be coming down the pipe here, where the government believes that they can ban someone from running for office as Trump tries to nationalize even state level elections. But we'll get to that in another podcast. So a gentleman named Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia was selected by Machado to run for president against Maduro in 2024. By all accounts and a lot of evidence, he won. But Maduro claimed, nope, I won. This was an illegitimate election. Here, I won. My election guys tell me I won, so I'm going to stay in as president. So you arguably, and it's a strong argument, Maduro is not the legitimate leader of Venezuela. So taking him out for that reason is okay. That's a way to think about it. Now, where do we go now? Well, on Saturday morning, my birthday, by the way, on Saturday morning, the Trump administration attacked Venezuela and kidnapped, and that's really the only word for it, kidnapped Maduro. CIA apparently helped. They fed the military the information on where his location was, where he could be found. And so they snatched him. And they've so far, supposedly he's in New York City right now and could even be arraigned as early as today on this drug charge indictment from 2020. Now, the administration framed this attack not as a decapitation of the regime, not as regime change, but as execution of an arrest warrant under this indictment. So think about that. The United States used military force and CIA information to arrest, quote unquote, a foreign leader, legitimate or not, under a U.S. indictment. Okay, so that's their logic behind this. But what's this really about? We have to ask this. We have to ask what's this really about. And there's a couple of things possible. Of course, a lot of leftists will say, well, it's about the oil. We just want to snatch the oil. That's all it's about. And there's some reason to think that because one of Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio's big donors, is an oil guy, and Trump claims that he spoke to oil industry executives before this happened, and they were chomping at the bit to go in. Not that they necessarily needed to get rid of Maduro to do that, and not that that's really true, given that this would be an enormous investment in an unstable part of the world that may or may not achieve any returns. So what's really going on here? Could be oil. That's a possibility. And Trump has said that the United States is running Venezuela for the time being until they can create a stable regime. Now, by Venezuelan law, Delcy Rodriguez, a woman who is the vice president under Maduro, becomes interim president, and by Venezuelan law, she has to call for new elections. Now, this is an interesting point here, because if this plays out the way Venezuelan law says it has to, then you could have new elections in 30 to 60 days, and Machado's opposition could win. And this sounds like it might be one of the ways Trump is hoping this will go, given that Machado and her team it's again, they're right wingers. And so they are a sort of on Trump's side here, even though he's kind of pushed her to the side and said she's not going to be running things. So, but that could be one way this plays out. And the least destabilizing way, if at the end of the day, the Rodriguez administration, Maduro's sort of faction, decides that the best thing to do is to just hold elections, let the opposition party win, see what they can do with it, and then come back later if things don't improve. But what could Trump's end game be here? And I've read some articles, and I'm no conspiracy theorist, but this kind of makes sense. And this could indirectly be a way of going after the Cuban regime. As Venezuela and Cuba are strong allies, and the Venezuelan government has been supporting the Cuban government for some years now with using their oil profits. And this helps the Cuban government remain stable. And there may be some hope. Remember, Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, Florida politician, is a Cuban American. He has said before that he prefers Cuba be free, democratically elected, out from under the Castro regime, right? And it could be that part of this is about trying to destabilize Cuba and create a new regime there. I think, Trump, we have to think about this from Trump's perspective too. And I'll start talking about foreign policy here in a second, but remember that Donald Trump is very transactional. Everything he does is transactional, and mostly to put money in his pocket. It's not inconceivable, honestly, to think that Trump might, they put a bounty on Machado, $50 million bounty on Machado. It's not inconceivable to me that Trump will come back next week and say, "Oh, I got Maduro. The government has to give me that $50 million reward," and then get his lackeys to actually pay him. So this could really be nothing more than Donald Trump trying to put $50 million in reward money in his own pocket, using the U.S. military and the CIA to get that done. Not that any of the troops who actually went there and attacked the city and captured Maduro would see any of that money. So that's an interesting take. But again, Donald Trump is totally transactional. He wants something, either it's a real estate deal of some kind, which could be true either in Venezuela or in Cuba, or he stands to gain something from this. Some donor wants it, whether it's Cubans who want Cuba freed, and they want to go back and take over Cuba, or whether it's oil people who want to get at the oil in Venezuela, or whether it's someone else who just wanted to see Venezuela regime change. And this has interesting implications for American domestic policy, at least domestic politics, because the America First crowd isn't exactly happy about this. Remember, Donald Trump ran on no more wars, no more forever wars, no more regime change. And now in the first year of his presidency, well, early in the second year of his presidency, he's gone straight to regime change in Venezuela. And we know this is not about drugs. This is not about fentanyl or cocaine or drug trafficking, because he just pardoned the Honduran president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was actually already convicted of drug crimes in the U.S. So we know this isn't about drugs. It's something transactional. Might be the easy 50 million, he thinks. It might be something else, something that's a little better hidden. But we know this is transactional. Now, what does this mean for foreign policy? Now, the first thing that people will jump to and say is that this creates a normative change in the way nations operate. Now, my training is in international relations theory, okay, and public international policy. So there are several different theories on how states interact and why they behave the way they do. The simplest one is what we call realism, and it's basically states are sovereign actors. They're selfish. They care about power and nothing else. Okay, and they will do what they have to do to protect their own security and to expand their power. Okay, and this would explain what just happened. Okay, it's some Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine on spreading American power into South America, into Venezuela. All right, capturing the oil, which would be a national security question if it was really going to go down that road. Okay, now there are other thoughts on international relations and how states work. One of those is liberalism and neoliberalism, which basically boils down to Americans people basically want to cooperate, nations want to cooperate, and they understand that by creating institutions that manage international behavior in the absence of an agent that can enforce an international law of some kind, they'll create these institutions to do the same thing and increase prosperity for everyone. This is very much an economic viewpoint, but it's the idea of liberal institutionalism took strong shape, took powerful shape after World War II, when the United States and its former World War II allies and the defeated enemy, Italy and Germany, worked to create institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the United Nations, and to create the conditions where democracy can expand into previously anti-democratic states, and liberal economics could expand, that is, free markets could expand into spaces like the former Soviet Union where they didn't exist before. And this was done in large part while the United States was the hegemon. The United States had pretty much all of the military forces in the world, right? The United States could have defeated any other country in the world and conceivably defeated all of them together, given that our industrial might had not been touched, had not been damaged, and was geared up to basically stay on a wartime footing as long as we needed it to. We didn't go down that road. We created these institutions in order to basically expand the American system, the American value system, American democracy, American free market concepts around the world as a hedge against the day when we no longer did have the most powerful military in the world, against the day when other countries could conceivably become peer nations militarily, thinking China, Soviet Union / Russia, India is a possibility, or even some emergent South American or African nations. So we could these institutions. Trump is tearing these down. And I have some thoughts on why that I'll go into as we go forward through the year. I think that oligarchs across the globe are doing what they can to create an oligarchical system, a world oligarchical system that frees them from the constraints of the state. Part of that project is destroying the American state and its regulatory sort of system. And part of that is using American military might to basically take what we want. And this is, all the tech bros, all the billionaires have just cheered this Venezuela thing pretty loudly. Now, there's other ways of thinking about international relations. The one that I kind of prefer is an idea known as constructivism, where states construct these ideas. They construct ideas like sovereignty. What does sovereignty mean? And they construct a normative set of rules, a set of shared understandings about the way states should behave. And that has some appeal to me on a social constructivist level. And it doesn't really explain what happened in Venezuela, but it does suggest that, to the extent it's a good way of thinking about international behavior, it does suggest that this could greatly change the normative understanding about what it's okay for states to do with respect to other national leaders. There's historically been a huge stigma against states basically kidnapping foreign leaders, even of enemy states, right? We didn't spend a lot of time trying to kidnap Adolf Hitler during World War II. It's just wasn't really something we thought about. Now, that's not to say we've never done this. We basically invaded Panama and captured Noriega on a similar argument that he was wanted for drug crimes in the U.S. and needed to be in the U.S. to be prosecuted. And of course, Obama went into Pakistan and killed Osama bin Laden. He was not a national leader, But a lot of Republicans, a lot of the MAGA guys will compare that and say, well, you guys, you leftists didn't complain when Obama did the same thing and attacked a country without warning to kill or capture someone that was living there. And honestly, that's sort of a fair point. But the context was quite a bit different. Obama was not a national leader. Osama bin Laden was not a national leader. We were at war in Afghanistan, a neighboring state, and Pakistan was protecting someone that we knew had committed heinous crimes against the United States that went beyond drug crimes, went to murder on a massive scale. So, and honestly, if there's a good reason for this and this is managed well, I don't necessarily have a big problem with kidnapping Maduro. He's a bad guy. He needed to be gone. Always prefer when these things happen domestically, when the Venezuelan people figure this out for themselves. And if they want help, they ask us for it, and then we give it to them in some way. That's the best way to do this, besides, not unilaterally just going in. And by the way, there were some civilian deaths in this attack. So it's not as if there was no collateral damage. This was not a precision strike. And at the end of the day, I guess part of my problem is I just simply do not trust the Trump administration to effectively manage all of this. I just do not trust them to effectively take care of this problem and resolve it in a way that will improve conditions in Venezuela and create more stability rather than less. I just don't believe they're competent to do that. It's also important to point out that this is pretty much classic fascism. Overseas adventures, territorial expansion. They're starting to talk about Greenland again, about we need Greenland for national security, and about taking it. Not sure what's so interesting to Trump there, but we know that fascist governments have to create an external enemy in order to maintain domestic bliss at home, maintain domestic power at home. This is what Maduro was doing. Maduro was creating foreign enemies in order to keep power. Hey, we have to stick together and fight these other guys, and once we fight these other guys, they're the problem. They're the reasons you're poor. They're the reasons you're starving. And once we defeat these other guys, then we can be a democracy again. That's the playbook. So where are we now? Trump says we're running Venezuela. There's no evidence of any kind that we are. Delcy Rodriguez says that, the Maduro regime is still in place. That entire government is still in place. Their secret police are still in place. The same legislature is still in place. So it's not clear if this was actually any kind of regime change. We'll also see what evidence they have against Maduro in this indictment. And if they can prove it, he absolutely should be prosecuted and then punished. If he is a drug cartel leader and he's brought any kind of illegal drugs to the U.S., broken U.S. law, he should be prosecuted. So definitely not against that. But this does create the conditions where other countries will say, well, if the U.S. does this, we can do it too. So are the Russians going to try to kidnap Zelensky? Are the Chinese going to try to capture the Taiwanese leaders? Or at what point do we start to see other countries say, well, this leader, Donald Trump, violated Nigerian law when he bombed us, so we're going to kidnap Donald Trump? And it's a hell of a lot harder to kidnap a U.S. president, apparently, than it is a Venezuelan president. But, Maduro had his own security people. He had a team there, just like we have the Secret Service. And it's not completely ridiculous to think that some group inside the U.S. could actually kidnap the U.S. president, or other countries could kidnap other foreign leaders that they consider enemies, that they consider to have broken their law in some way. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. So let's see what's coming up. That's about 25 minutes of ranting on Venezuela. There's more to come on this. Scott and I will tape the weekly podcast. We're going to ramp that back up. We'll tape that tomorrow for posting on Thursday. I've been hinting at this for weeks now, and there's a lot new stuff coming here at Foggy Bottom Line. I'm going to start doing a live broadcast on Monday mornings at 10 o'clock, talking about the week's events, the weekend's events, just generally discussing the way we're going with this and what's happening in the world based on my expertise. We're going to start a weekly policy podcast where I will discuss some domestic or foreign policy concept or plan or potential legislation. Probably start with Medicare for all. There's a lot of discussion about healthcare now that the ACA subsidies have gone away, at least for now. And I'm just so you know, I am skeptical of the idea that markets and competition can regulate healthcare markets. I just don't believe that's possible, given that the economic principle of sort of substitution isn't available for healthcare. If I need a stent in my heart to keep me from dying, I can't substitute that like I can get Pop-Tarts instead of Eggo waffles, frozen waffles, okay? I can't decide I want cornflakes because Cheerios cost too much. There is no substitution. There is no substitute product for healthcare intervention that will extend my life. There simply isn't. And this is why I'm skeptical that free markets and competition can properly distribute healthcare resources. I'm not talking about health insurance. I'm talking about healthcare and treatment itself. So look forward to that policy podcast. We'll get a schedule here pretty soon. Some of this will be live. Some of this will not be live. I think a lot of we're going to do a lot more. I'm going to do a lot more live stuff, but some of this will be recorded. And I'd like to get the sort of policy stuff up on Wednesdays. And then on Fridays, I'm going to start doing another Silly Things podcast where I'll talk about sports, entertainment, cooking, maybe. Just, our tagline is politics, economics, and other silly things. And from time to time, we want to talk about other silly things. And then I know that Scott has some ideas for some podcasts. Scott's an election official. He definitely could weigh in on his own podcast about elections and how they work. Since we have a pretty important one coming up, you might see that. And then he's talking about doing some sort of woodworking podcast, talking to experts and things like that. That's another area of expertise for him. And then finally, I'll be starting this month the Topics in American Politics lecture series. This will be subscription based. It's meant for homeschoolers and adult learners who want to learn more about the United States government, how it got to be the way, what it is, both at the founding era, what sort of social and technological conditions caused the United States government and the founders to basically construct the United States government, the Constitution, the way they did it. And I think this is a very important way of discussing American government and how it functions, which will be part of this series. But it's also important to know why we have the Electoral College. Why do we have the Second Amendment? What was the impetus? What was the sort of founding concept that caused that to happen? What was the Three-Fifths Compromise really about? Why is the Senate so anti-democratic? Okay, and then I'll go through sort of a in a historical way, a review of the American government, how its functions have changed over time, and how social and technological change have influenced that. So the end of slavery, for example, the black codes in the Jim Crow era, the genocide against the natives who lived here when Europeans arrived. And all of this is, I basically have two goals here. One is to help people who want a good, solid government class. So this will function as a good, solid high school government class for homeschoolers. Okay, if you want the real deal and not the pablum that I was taught when I was in the 10th grade, and what you get in a Texas high school now, where they overlook a lot of this stuff because it makes America as an idea, and white people specifically kind of look bad. And I don't want to make any group of people look bad, but we got to tell the truth about how we got to where we are. The second goal in doing this lecture series is to help adult learners understand where we are and where we came from, and then to basically get some information out there to counter some of this, some of these ideas on the right you have about white nationalism, Christo nationalism, this project that they have, this Project 2025, that looks an awful lot like the construction of a white Christian ethno-state, where people who are not white and cannot trace their European background back to the Mayflower don't share the same privileges as this group. And that brings me to one final new sort of series we're going to start, and I'll be taking a look at the right wing, what it looks like now. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, you all know Trump and Rubio and Hegseth and their lackeys, but a lot of you haven't heard of folks like Nick Fuentes, who is basically a neo-Nazi who started the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville some years back. Fuentes is a white nationalist. He's an America First guy. He leads the Groypers. Big feud between him and Charlie Kirk before Kirk was assassinated. And there's kind of this rift in the right on that. But when I was working on one of my master's degrees, one of the things I studied was social movements, and I've focused my research on the right wing. I've let that slip in the last few years as I've been working more corporate jobs. But I'm going to get back to that and start doing a study of this. And some of the stuff that's out there, some of the stuff that's on YouTube, that's on these podcasts, is pretty crazy. It's some crazy stuff that this is a lot of the source of the anti-immigration sentiment in the U.S. It's a lot of the source of the discrimination and bigotry you see. It's again fascism, pure and simple, where you basically have to create this idea of the other, whether it's black people or immigrants or Jews or homosexuals or whoever. The problem we have is these other people. The immigrants come here and they take all our jobs. That is, when they're not all on welfare, getting welfare that should go to Americans. Not sure how you reconcile that. They're either taking all our jobs or they're taking all our welfare. They're not doing both. So a lot coming down the pipe. It's 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. This is Stan Scott. Go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube. Follow me here on Patreon, subscribe. This is going to go to a subscription model pretty soon, where some of the content will be free, but not all. The subscriptions will be inexpensive. We'll probably kick that off sometime around the 1st of February. I want to get a bunch of content out there so that gives you guys a chance to decide if this is worth it to you. And give me some comments. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me what you'd like for me to talk about. And let me know. Scott and I are doing a lot of work on a business plan. We're doing a lot of work on production values and formatting. We're going to improve this, especially the video, the recorded podcast. But there's a lot more coming. So I hope you pay attention. I hope you subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to find out more about us, you can go to www.foggybottomline.com. We're on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media, and we're on TikTok, Blue Sky, all those at Foggy Bottom Line. So take care. Happy Monday. Have a good week. We'll see you later this week with the regular podcast. We'll pop on Thursday, and some more content, both live and recorded, is also on the way. Thanks for listening, everyone. Reach out. Let me know what you think. This is Stan Scott signing off. Hope you all have a great day and a very happy New Year. Thanks.